And to be quite honest with you, I'm disgusted. I'm disgusted with Sue Bird, okay? Sue Bird.
Did you hear that? Sue Bird has officially lost it, and she's blaming Caitlin Clark and Stephen A. Smith.
I want to say the semifinal game is up like 130%.
Yeah.
And that's without Caitlin.
All the games are up.
Now, the reason why it really, really gets my blood boiling.
The drama is real, folks. Sue Bird is out here throwing a tantrum similar to a 5-year-old who's denied candy. And why, you ask? Because the WNBA's ratings took a nosedive as soon as Caitlin left. And instead of looking in the mirror or addressing the league's own shortcomings, she's decided to point fingers at Stephen A. Smith and Caitlin Clark. Yep, you heard that right. Two of the most unbothered and outspoken personalities in sports are living rent-free in Sue Bird's head, and it's a show you don't want to miss.
So, Sue Bird is obviously one of the greatest of all time, and she's made a take about Stephen A. Smith on her podcast.
Sue Bird is apparently unhappy that Caitlin Clark's exit has started the downfall of the WNBA. That's why she's attacking major analysts standing by Clark.
Those people, I've seen Stephen A. Smith talk about it. I've seen Shannon Sharp talk about it. And that's what I just don't understand is they work for ESPN. So why are you hating on a product? What are we calling a product? A platform? What's it called?
Product. Yeah.
A product
This
that
is a product.
Did you hear that? She blatantly accuses analysts and experts like Stephen Smith and Shannon Sharp of being too honest. Can you believe this? Now, before we dive deeper, let's start with the main focus of the story. Caitlin Clark. Since her departure from the WNBA after her rookie season, the league has been struggling to keep fans interested. The ratings? Free-falling faster than Angel Reese's defensive stats. Instead of acknowledging Clark's impact as a once-in-a-generation talent who literally carried the league on her back, Sue Bird is out here trying to rewrite the narrative.
is because it's the exact same thing we see in every other sport.
According to her, the ratings crash isn't about Clark leaving. It's about negative narratives created by analysts like Stephen A. Smith. Sweetie, are we watching the same league?
So basically, the gist of it is that you can see here, Sue Bird talks about the overall viewership without Caitlin Clark and how Stephen A. and Shannon Sharp portray the picture differently. Ironically enough, I think she's probably calling out the wrong people.
Now, let's not ignore the delicious irony here. Sue Bird, one of the league's most celebrated veterans, is out here blaming critics for hating on the WNBA, all while spewing her own brand of negativity. It's almost poetic, isn't it? Her blind hatred for anyone who dares to hold the league accountable is doing more damage to the WNBA's reputation than any commentator ever could. Maybe instead of targeting Stephen A. Smith and Caitlin Clark, Sue should focus on why the league has failed to capitalize on its golden era of talent.
And to be quite honest with you, I'm disgusted. I'm disgusted with Sue Bird. I love her. But I didn't appreciate this article that I read, okay, when it came to her talking about yours truly. Because you see, far be it, this is the headline, y'all. Sue Bird calls out ESPN host for, quote, hating on WNBA playoff ratings after Caitlin Clark's exit.
Enter Stephen A. Smith, the man who needs no introduction and definitely isn't here for Bird's baseless accusations. In his iconic fashion, he clapped back harder than Caitlin Clark hitting a logo three-pointer, calling Sue's comments disgustingly inaccurate. And let's be real, he's got the receipts to back it up. All he's done is report the facts. The WNBA is losing viewers and money faster than a blind poker player. And that's not hate, that's statistics. But apparently, in Sue's world, facts are now considered anti-WNBA propaganda. Talk about a stretch worthy of an Olympic gymnast.
I think it is completely disingenuous to say that Caitlin Clark is not the biggest draw in the sport. I think it's completely false to say that Caitlin Clark is not arguably bigger than the sport.
And then there's Caitlin Clark, the unbothered queen of basketball who, despite Sue's tantrums, has done nothing but elevate the game. But instead of appreciating what Clark brought to the table, Sue's out here acting like Clark was the problem. Newsflash. The problem isn't Clark. It's the league's inability to sustain the momentum she created.
They work for ESPN. So why are you hating on a product? What are we calling a product? A platform? What's it called?
Product. Yeah.
A product
This
that
is a product
that ESPN
that they invest in.
Yeah, that's where these viewership
It's your
numbers are coming.
product.
Yeah, it's a business you're in. It's not that they
Yeah.
can't. And by the way, it's not that they can't be critical of certain things. They can have their opinions. But that's where I don't understand the framing of that.
Her latest gripe? She doesn't understand the framing. Oh, really? Sue, it's not a riddle wrapped in an enigma. The WNBA is losing fanbase faster than a sinking ship loses passengers, and the commentators you're targeting are just pointing out what everyone already knows. It's like yelling at the weatherman for predicting a hurricane instead of grabbing an umbrella. What's truly laughable here is her calling out Stephen A. Smith and Shannon Sharpe, who, by the way, work for ESPN, and as if their affiliation with the network means they should sugarcoat the truth. Actually, many people have called out ESPN for hating on Caitlin Clark, but Stephen A. Smith is one of those who spoke the truth, and that is, Caitlin Clark is the real deal. Sue, you can't just call someone wrong just because you don't like what's being said. That's not how journalism or reality works.
You said what? Why? Why, y'all? Really? This is where we have to go? Can we put her quotes up on the screen, please? Because I want everybody to know what she said.
Sue's logic here is shakier than a rookie's free throw under pressure. She says, "Why are you hating on a product? It's a business you're in." Newsflash, Sue, being critical of something doesn't mean you hate it. It means you care enough to call out its flaws and demand better. Stephen A. and Shannon aren't rooting for the WNBA to fail. They're just not willing to pretend everything's sunshine and rainbows when it's clearly not.
And one thing I will say is that, like, to be fair, Stephen A. Smith, he knows what he's doing. He knows what he's doing. The reality is that he's probably mildly annoyed at it. And he's probably mildly annoyed to take, but you know, you gotta be disgusted. You gotta be absolutely disgusted. And look, I'm sorry, I'm doing the same. I'll do the same thing. I'll do the same thing.
What really takes the cake is how Sue conveniently ignores the actual problem. The WNBA isn't struggling because of negative press. It's struggling because of poor leadership, lackluster marketing, and an inability to capitalize on its star players like Caitlin Clark. But sure, Sue, let's blame the commentators for telling the truth. That's a brilliant strategy, if your goal is to keep deflecting and never actually solve anything.
She continues because she brings up my name. So these numbers are still really high, and they're still really meaningful. And yet some people continue to flip that. I've seen Stephen A. Smith talk about it. I've seen Shannon Sharpe talk about it. And what I don't understand is they work for ESPN. So why are you hating on a business ESPN is in? I want to say the semifinals games are up like 130%, and that's without Caitlin.
Here's the thing. Stephen A. Smith and Shannon Sharpe aren't the villains Sue Bird wants them to be. They're just pointing out what the league itself refuses to address.
Respectfully, Sue Bird, you are inaccurate. It is just that simple.
Stephen is not pulling any punches here, and that's all because of Sue Bird's ignorance. I mean, honestly, Sue's comments reek of desperation, like someone trying to patch a sinking boat with duct tape. She doesn't want to face the hard truths, so she's attacking the messengers. It's easier to blame the media than to admit the league she's devoted her life to is faltering. But denial isn't just a river in Egypt, Sue. It's the current you're riding straight into irrelevance.
Aaron, do we cover sports? Griff, do we cover sports? I think we cover sports. So if somebody got arrested, I can't bring that up?
Smith is saying that he's only stating the facts, and that's why Sue's raging inside. The irony here is richer than a billionaire's dessert. Sue Bird, who spent her career demanding respect and honesty in women's sports, is now crying foul because someone dared to tell it like it is. She's not upset about the WNBA's struggles. She's upset that people are pointing them out. Well, Sue, if you can't handle the heat, maybe it's time to step out of the kitchen, or in this case, off the court of public opinion.
Where he's more so than anything talking about how, look, we cover everything in the WNBA, and I actually do agree with that point. Like, you cover everything in sports, you cover whatever is the news, and there are sometimes the ratings are the news, and that's just kind of the reality of the business.
That's correct. The ratings are going down, and the people in the news are telling it what is. Sue's just being naive here. We get it, Sue. You're mad. But maybe, just maybe, instead of playing the blame game, you should focus on figuring out why the WNBA can't seem to hold on to its audience. Spoiler alert, it's not Stephen A.'s fault.
What are you talking about? The story is the story, Sue Bird. What was Stephen A. Smith and Shannon guilty of exactly?
So, what's the takeaway here? Sue Bird's tantrum is a distraction, a loud, misguided attempt to shift the focus away from the real issues. Caitlin Clark's departure and Stephen A. Smith's commentary aren't the problem. The problem is a league that refuses to adapt, refuses to listen, and refuses to evolve, Instead of throwing shade at critics and former players, Sue Bird and the WNBA should be taking notes. As for Stephen A. Smith, he's not losing sleep over Sue's comments. In fact, he's probably laughing all the way to the studio, ready to drop another truth bomb on national television. And Caitlin Clark, she's too busy thriving to even acknowledge the noise. The real question is, will the WNBA ever learn from its mistakes, or will it keep blaming everyone but itself? Only time will tell. But one thing's for sure, Caitlin Clark doesn't need the WNBA. The WNBA needs Caitlin Clark. So, what do you think? Is Sue Bird right in calling out Stephen A. Smith, or is he only stating the facts? Let me know in the comments, and thanks for watching. Do like, share, and subscribe for more information on the world of basketball, and we'll see you in the next one.